0.01%. It's a staggeringly low number, isn't it? But according to the text we're diving into today, that is currently the absolute maximum rate of human salvation. Less than 1 in 10,000 people. It's a pretty bleak starting point for sure, but as we're going to see, it actually sets the perfect stage for a really fascinating piece of modern religious literature.
Welcome to today's Explainer. Today we are unpacking a highly specific, very intense document from 2008. We are focusing squarely on the teachings and works of the guide Shufeng, the founder of Life Chen Yan. The text itself is called The Noah's Ark in New Era. Now, our goal here isn't to judge or endorse this theology. Instead, we're going to objectively analyze exactly how this text is constructed. Like, how does a modern leader establish absolute authority? And how do they leverage ancient myths to create this intense modern urgency? By breaking down this primary source material, we get a front-row seat to the actual mechanics of a new religious movement.
Okay, let's dive into our roadmap. First up, the modern Noah's Ark. Then, Section 2, the identity of Shufeng. Third, we'll look at the strict conditions for salvation. And finally, consequences and final warnings.
Section 1, the modern Noah's Ark, establishing the cosmic problem.
And this brilliantly illustrates the central framework of Shufeng's entire argument. Think about the historical or biblical Noah. The text reminds us that Noah built his ark because of a divine revelation. The people around him? Well, they laughed, they completely ignored him, just kept on eating and drinking, and in the end, only 8 people were saved while everyone else perished. Now, look at the modern parallel the text draws. Shufeng claims he received a revelation to build Life Chen Yan, framing it as a modern ark. Just like Noah, he says people in China are mocking him, insulting him, and totally ignoring his teachings. But instead of saving just 8 people, Shufeng states his goal is to bump that salvation rate from a dismal 0.01% up to maybe 1 or 2%. By setting up this direct comparison, the text immediately frames societal rejection not as a failure, but as historical proof of its divine legitimacy. You know, being mocked is exactly what's supposed to happen to a true prophet in this narrative. It effectively turns criticism into a validating force.
But there is a very specific catch to this salvation. The text introduces a crucial term, Chanyan Celestials. Shufeng declares he is looking for exactly 98 Chanyan Celestials to enter the roster of this modern Noah's Ark. So this isn't some open-ended invitation, it's a strict, hard quota. And the text issues a really sharp ultimatum here. Once those 98 individuals are found, the door of the Ark will be permanently closed to China. Shufeng actually writes that because he's been insulted and is heartbroken by the surrounding culture, he's just going to leave the rest of the nation behind to deal with their own struggles. He basically challenges everyone left behind to see if they can survive what he calls the 36 paths of the 8 diagrams, all on their own. It is a textbook scarcity tactic, creating immense psychological pressure to be one of the chosen few before the door just slams shut forever.
Moving right along to Section 2, the identity of Shufeng, the divine provision.
So to build this absolute authority, the author doesn't just claim to be a smart philosopher or a good teacher. No, he goes much, much further. He claims to be the messenger of the greatest creator. And on top of that, he explicitly states he is the incarnation of Jesus Christ and the incarnation of Buddha Sakyamuni. He describes his ultimate role as the one who has come to gather the ripened crops. By merging the central figures of the world's 2 biggest religions, Christianity and Buddhism, into his own single persona, Shufeng is attempting to consolidate literally all spiritual authority. The text is essentially arguing, hey, you don't need to look anywhere else because all divine paths converge right here in this one guide. It's a sweeping, massive theological claim designed to position his teachings as the ultimate, final revelation.
Section 3, strict conditions for salvation. Tearing down expectations.
Now, what's really interesting here is just how exclusivist the text becomes. Think about the traditional ways people usually assume they can achieve salvation or reach a good afterlife. Things like being a Christian, spreading Buddhism, fighting a holy war, having immense wealth or political power, doing magic spells, out-of-body travel, or even, just being a genuinely kind, honest person. Well, Shufeng's verdict on all of that is uncompromising. None of it matters. The text explicitly warns the reader not to imagine that any of these things will grant them entry to heaven. In fact, Shufeng calls humanity arrogant, ignorant, and greedy, stating plainly that traditional morality or belonging to other faiths is entirely insufficient. By aggressively rejecting literally every single other path, the text creates this total spiritual vacuum, and the only thing allowed to fill that vacuum? Life Chen Yan.
And we actually see this narrowing of the path happen even within the movement's own history. The text admits that in the past, followers were encouraged to have a really broad philosophical education. They were told to go read the Bible, the Diamond Sutra, the Quran, at the Tao Te Ching, even study scientific theories and the wisdom of global sages. It used to be a very open, exploratory approach, but that has changed. The text declares that now, if you want to be one of those 98 Chanyuan celestials, that era of exploration is completely over. The new requirement strictly follows Shui Feng's guidance with absolutely zero room for negotiation. The time for discussion and exchange has officially ended. It's an abrupt, massive shift from open philosophical study to absolute singular obedience to the guide, which obviously centralizes control incredibly tightly within the movement.
There's a quote from the text that captures this intense urgency perfectly. It reads, "Either you believe or you don't. Hugging your half-belief is harming yourself as well as others. It is a strict binary. There's no middle ground here, no room for doubt, and absolutely no space for casual followers. If you aren't fully in, the text argues you are actively doing harm. It really forces the reader into making an immediate, totally uncompromising decision."
Which brings us to Section 4, Consequences and Final Warnings. The penalty for rejection.
As you might expect, the text doesn't hold back on the metaphysical threats. It specifically targets people who have absorbed Life Chanyuan's wisdom, but then turn around and attack the organization or try to obstruct its construction. For those individuals, Shufang promises that the inflamed layer and frozen layer will be their future destination. He claims they are literally hindering the advance of others to heaven, and because of that, massive spiritual debts are accumulating. The text vividly warns that when the time comes, ghosts will actually go to their houses to haunt them for their wrongdoings, and they will be forced to pay off this cosmic debt. It's an incredibly potent mechanism, right? Using the fear of vivid eternal punishment to enforce loyalty and silence any internal critics or defectors.
So the crucial point all boils down to this final, chilling line from the text. There isn't much time to linger. You have to count down. The entire document we've explored today is meticulously designed to build up to this exact feeling of apocalyptic urgency. The door of the Ark is closing, those 98 spots are filling up fast, the guide is preparing to leave, and the countdown has officially begun, leaving the reader with this overwhelming sense that even a moment's hesitation could cost them absolutely everything.
Which leaves us with a really thought-provoking question to chew on as we wrap up this explainer. How do new religious movements leverage ancient frameworks, like Noah's Ark, to assert modern authority and demand exclusive obedience? We've seen exactly how Guy Xusfeng does it with Life Chanyuan, by reframing societal rejection as proof of divinity, consolidating the identities of past religious figures, tearing down all competing paths, and implementing a really strict countdown of scarcity. It's a fascinating, complex, and highly effective rhetorical strategy that we see echoing throughout human history. Thank you so much for exploring this with me today, and keep questioning how the messages around you are constructed.